Welcome to this edition of the SAU Report. I'm Bryan Jones.
And I'm Marquita Newton.
With us today we have the Assistant Professor of Arts, Greg Skaggs. Greg, it's good to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
Greg, tell us, what brought you to SAU?
Well, last year I taught at Southern Arkansas University Tech at Camden, and Stephen Oakes had called me, and I guess had heard me working. I heard my work there, and invited me to come and interview, and that's how I got here. Elementary, middle school art in Oklahoma City, mostly to underprivileged children, and kindergarten through 8th grade. And before that, I was a graphic designer in the Oklahoma City area and freelanced out of Dallas and Philadelphia as well. So.
Okay.
All right. What sort of new things do you hope to bring to SAU?
I think what I bring is just a new way of thinking, not necessarily new, but with Stephen Oakes and Doug Waterfield and Scott, who are excellent instructors in their own right. It's just one more piece of fruit, or something else on the plate, just a little bit more variety. I think artists and it's just a fun thing to be around people that think like you and who have a creative, kind of a creative way of responding to things. And I just kind of bring a different way of looking at things, and hopefully when artists get together, there's some kind of I don't know, some new energy. So hopefully maybe just a different new type of energy.
Are there any new classes that you hope to bring?
Next semester we're starting a web design, multimedia class, basically dealing with proper web design techniques, what makes a good web page, a web system work for a company or for a student themselves if they need to do self-promotion. And also just simple animation with Flash, and also through some other software. So,
okay.
And I would like to eventually teach history and theory of graphic design, which has always been a passion of mine. So.
Mm-hmm. Why would you want to teach the history class?
I think as with any subject that a student might be pursuing in a post-high school level, you have to really understand and know where you come from. And as with graphic design, I think just knowing and understanding the history and theory of design makes you a better designer. Because creating new things is difficult, but we tend to reciprocate, and design styles basically kind of come in circles. And like today, we see a resurgence of 50s style, or even Art Deco becomes more prevalent in the design world, and so you learn a little bit of everything, and then you kind of mush it together and develop the way of the decade of 2000 or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so exactly how did you get started in art or graphic design?
How did I get started? Well, I've always been interested in drawing and building things and putting things together, and art came easy for me, drawing and painting. So as early as 5th grade, I remember entering county fairs in Oklahoma and being recognized by teachers and by my parents that maybe I had a special talent. And I took art classes in junior high by a local artist, and through high school went to various competitions and I did really well. And so it was just a natural progression, it seemed like. So.
Okay, so is there any one particular person or artist that you can think back to that inspired you?
I was very fortunate in high school to be selected to attend the Oklahoma Summer Art Institute, which is a state competition. In fact, I had to drive. I was from western Oklahoma. I had to drive 2 hours to Oklahoma City to compete with artists. from around the state, and only 20 were selected. And so I attended the first time my freshman year, and attended freshman, sophomore, well, 3 years anyway. So my second year there, I was able to work with an artist by the name of Larry Rivers. And Larry Rivers is a very well-known pop artist from the New York school. His work is predominant during the late 50s, early 60s, and even into the through the 70s. He just passed away recently, but working with Larry Rivers it really changed my way of seeing things and thinking. And so that was a very pivotal point in my life, and that's when I decided I wanted to be an artist, take art as a career. So that would be the first, one of my first true art instructors, Mr. Johnson, I can't think of his first name, Donnie Johnson, high school art teacher, of course, is very influential. And then pretty much college professors that I've worked with. First one come to mind is Dr. Jim Watson out of the University of Central Oklahoma. Very influential, extremely brilliant man, a problem solver, a risk taker, and I basically put on his clothes, so to speak, for 2 years, and so that was another point for me. And then recently in graduate school at the University of Oklahoma, George Hughes, who's a big, huge monster African from Ghana, Africa, and we just became very close friends. And he was just creative, and his energy was so amazing, and we just clicked, and I became a better artist just spending 3 years with him. So I'm sure that answered your question there. So.
Yeah.
Okay, if there were a past artist, like in the past, a famous artist that you could meet, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow. Probably Leonardo da Vinci. He was a Renaissance man. He could do anything. He was an architect, a designer, an inventor. He was a thinker. I mean, he was just an amazing man. And it would be fun to just kind of follow him around, shadow him, so to speak, for a while, for sure. Just to see what his process was. You know, what did he do when he got up in the morning? You know, what did he do before he went to bed? When an idea came to him, what did he do immediately? That's a good question.
Yeah, Leonardo, he brought in some new things in art and so forth, and graphics design is kind of a new thing we have now. Is there a difference between graphics design and normal art as we see it now?
Yeah, they are very polar. Art is, art today, I mean, it's changed over the years, but art today is, to be a good artist, meaning has to come from your art. It's more than just looking at pretty pictures. Meaning has to be a part of it, and so the artist's intent, what is the artist trying to say, is a big part of it. I equal it to a writer who writes poetry, and that creative process, and then the reader reads the poetry. There's that exchange, and I think art should be the same way. In fact, I consider myself a writer of images. And so when I create art, it's to hopefully have a response by a reader, much as you respond to poetry. Either it makes you happy or it makes you sad. And so my art hopefully does that. And it's really strange. I just recently did a workshop with Stephen Oakes on creativity with a graduate school class. And one of the first things a student came to me was asked me a question about a show that I did 2 months ago. It had bothered her so much about a piece that was hanging in the gallery that she had to ask me. She had kept it inside. And so when I think about that, I think that was successful. That's a successful piece because she had to think about it. She had to take it home and then mold around in her head for 2 months. So that made me really happy. And the opposite is graphic design. Graphic design is not, the artist does not put his self into it as art does. It is, the sole purpose of design is taking information and organizing it in a way that makes it clear, where syntax is most important, where organizing the information is most important. That is good design. A good example is when you walk into a large building, you should be able to see information should be readily available. That's why you have a sign with office numbers and names, and that's design. I mean, that's just simple design. Signage, a woman's restroom symbol and a men's restroom symbol. Just ordering of information, and that's what graphic design does. There's not necessarily artist intent. It's organizing information, making it clear to the reader. And there's a lot of bad design out there. So our jobs as graphic design instructors is to mold students into being better designers so that they make good decisions and solve problems well. So.
Okay. Okay. I hear that war is a common theme in your art. Tell us about this theme.
Well, it stems from several things. It's not just one thing. Immediately, the thought of this series in fact, the series was called Atomic Play, which is a juxtaposition of words. Atomic being explosive and destructive, and play, which is the exact opposite. In fact, play is very creative. So that juxtaposition of words is a big part of my concept. It stems first as a teacher in an elementary school. Like I said, I worked with underprivileged children, very low socioeconomical school. 95% of our students were on free or reduced lunch. And not that makes a difference. In fact, I enjoyed that. It was a challenge. But I had 2 of my students within my 8-year tenure at the school had been killed by either gang violence or had died of family abuse. And so, as I was reflecting on creating work, it was really mainly as a social statement on how we live today and how we treat our children and how children live. And and it also reverts back to my childhood, which was fairly easy and low stress. I mean, my family loves me, and they took care of me. They took me to church, and so it was pretty low stress. But I do remember my dad, who had served in Vietnam as a Marine, and playing war with his kit, his gun belt and his helmet and his jacket, and so you reflect on the things that are in your life as an artist, and you try and make something out of it. So you catch a little of this and a little of that, and you put it in a pot, you stir it around a little bit, and then you glue it on paper. So that's pretty much where it came from. And so then from there you do a lot of brainstorming and how do you arrange things on a page and what images come to mind. So I use my own children in my artwork, which is a reflection of my childhood, and I used the .45 toy pistol, the Western style pistol, as a symbol of the Americans romanticizing war and violence, because that's always been a symbol in Western movies.
Yeah.
And I use milk cartons as a symbol of the innocence of a child, milk being white, pure, a symbol of nurturing. And the shape of a milk carton is also similar to a house, which is safe, protective. And so a lot of the symbols that are in my art deal with houses, and then juxtaposition with violent themes inside the houses.
So are there any other themes besides war and innocence that you tend to use a lot?
I still have some things that I want to finish with that. I don't think I've got it completely. I want to create a children's book that has a lot of the imagery in it, and again, a children's book with kind of atomic theme, and it kind of goes back from the 50s when kids were told to hide under their desks when they hear the bomb explode, because that will protect you, and it's just a strange, sense of
No protection at
yes,
all,
exactly.
really.
And so hopefully I've got a few things that I want to finish that up, and I have new projects coming on. I'm working with a poet out of Tulsa, and we're putting some of his poetry into imagery. My website, gregskaggs.com, has some of that. We did a show last summer called Foe, People Against People, and it was a fun show, and we're doing another one hopefully this summer, so making it larger, bigger. Bigger is always better.
Okay, I have a question. Going back to you were talking about milk cartons.
Yes.
What would you say if the first thing that I thought about was missing children?
Yeah, in
That's
fact,
the first thing
definitely.
that I thought about.
I did a series just of, there were prints, monoprints, of milk cartons with children on them. And then I did a series with other things missing, like I put keys on them, missing keys. And then it got really silly after that. So, and that's what artists do. They try and they just take as much and reinterpolate it and discombobulate it, tear it apart, reassemble it, and artists do that. They explore it as much as they can, and that's just part of the creative process.
I have another question. Website design and multimedia are fairly new forms of art. Do you think there will be any more new forms of art besides websites? I mean, website or graphic design?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it may not be as obvious now. Bill Gates, what was it, 12 years ago or more, said that he didn't see why computers would need any more than 128K or something like that. And we look at where computers are now. Definitely, there'll be newer forms of art or new media for art, and it's just part of that expression that creative people feel they need, and they take what's available, and just like it has been through history, making a bowl and putting rocks in it. I mean, that's a form of art that's probably been around for thousands of years. Decorative art, and that's just part of how we are as people. We take what's available and make art with it.
So do you prefer the digital art, such as computers, or the traditional mediums?
Traditional, I really hate computers. I mean, personally.
Really?
Yeah, but it's just a tool that we have to use. I mean, personally, the use of my hands and creating things is more important than sitting at a computer, and it just seems so indirect. But unfortunately, with my job and the field of graphic design, the computer is a necessary tool. And as a designer, you have to know your tools. You have to be a master of your tools. So you have to know every aspect of it.
Okay. Do you believe that it is important to know about the history of art?
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of reverts back to the history of graphic design. You have to know where you came from. And art history is very important. Doug Waterfield teaches our it's hard to say, our art history classes, and he's very good at it. And our students really get a lot from that. And it's interesting to talk in graphic design too, when we talk about the Sumerians who created pictographs, and then they start to internalize it and understand why pictures and words kind of fit together, and how our alphabet was created, and because they were basically pictures that relate to sounds and symbols. So.
Is there any projects you're currently working on?
Yes, like I said, I'm working with a poet out of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
John Patrick Franklin is his name. He goes by the pen of MC Sucker, or I'm sorry, Sucker MC. He's a very creative mind. He's a National Merit Scholar, just an amazing talent. And we'll be working together on a show called Foe 2, which is people against people. And it's not necessarily people fighting, but it's just it's a conceptual, yeah, exactly. And it's just a lot of fun working and collaborating with people. I prefer to do that personally. I get a rush out of it. It's just amazing to work with creative people. It just spurs off new tornadoes in your mind towards new projects and new thought. And it's always good to be adventurous and take risks. And it's always a risk taking. You take risk when you work with other people. But 99% of the time, it's always a success.
Okay. If you had an opportunity to go work for like a big company doing graphic design or teaching children, to get them a brighter future going, which one would you do? Which one would you choose?
I would definitely work with children. Children are amazing, creative people. It just depends on the corporation too. I mean, if you asked if I could go work for Apple, I would love to work with Apple. I mean, they're never satisfied with the status quo. They're very interested in creating, and so it just depends on the corporation. Nickelodeon would be kind of fun,
Because you'd be working with kids too.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. So, but I do love working with kids. I was a camp counselor through school, and spent my summers together working at camp. In fact, that's where I met my wife. We were both camp counselors. And if you can love somebody sweaty and smelly and hot and stinky, then you can love them for life. So, and we've been married almost 14 years. So
that's wonderful. Okay, that was another question I was going to ask. As far as art goes, do you believe that art is very important in other subjects that the children are taking in school?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, studies have proven that the more you integrate subjects within subjects, that they understand it more. And it's when you divide them, where math and science and art become separated, that children really lose the understanding. It's when you put them together that they gain greater understanding. Because most children, I mean, my job was fairly easy because most kids love coming to art because it's their time to be creative and maybe make a mess and relax. And so I always gain that to my advantage, But, oh yeah, definitely. When you can take science and mix art with it, they understand science better. It's just a natural, and kids are naturally creative. It's school that takes them down from their creativity. They put them in desks in rows, and they force them to sit in a certain way. They can only sharpen their pencils at certain times. They can only go to the bathroom at certain times of the day. They eat lunch. They can't talk during lunch, and this is very common even where my kids go to school. And so where's the creativity is really hurts them. So the more chances they have to create art is really beneficial. Exactly.
So you enjoy your job because you get to teach people and
I love my
spread
job.
creativity.
I love working with people. I love working with young students because they're great minds, and I work with great faculty who just have a little bit. We're just different parts of the pie. Some of the crust and some of the apples and the sauce, and it just makes a nice flavor so that the students really get a taste of just something wonderful. And I'm just really fortunate to be a part of that. And
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you for coming. I really do appreciate that. Once again, this is the SAU Report. I'm Marquita Newton.
And I'm Bryan Jones.